Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what is the most insane, evil, funny, or dumb way a spouse has tried to screw the other? Part 2. Husband and wife divorce after the husband finds out his wife is sexting other guys. He goes into a deep depression. They didn't have much, lots of debt, and 2 dogs. One was a dog he had had since before the marriage. He got her. The other dog was only about 3 years old and was brought to keep the older 7-year-old dog company while they worked. Wife demanded that since he got his dog, that she got the other. He is depressed and just wants to move on, so he agrees. She gets the dog and has it put down the next day. She didn't want the dog, she just wanted to hurt him. How stupid of a person do you have to be to involve something as innocent as a dog in your petty fight that you are yourself responsible for? How do you justify something like that? I'm mad at him for finding out I cheated on him. She is an all-round stupid person. She knew how much she smashed up his life. When he died suddenly at 45 from liver failure, he replaced her with a bottle, and it didn't take long. She showed up at his funeral even though his parents expressly told her not to. She literally sat in the back and fanned herself the whole time. This one hits close to home because it happened between my parents. We had a family friend who was a lawyer, and my parents agreed that he would be the lawyer for both of them as a mediator. So, as the assets were being divided, my dad got absolutely slammed. She was going to get the house, cars, half his retirement, and an insane amount of alimony, to the tune of like $2,500 a month for the rest of her life. My dad has a good job as a municipal employee, but that was probably 70%-ish of his paycheck. Turns out that my mom and the family friend actually conspired to rip my dad off and make it seem like that's what a divorce settlement looks like, and she was going to kick back more money under the table after the dust had settled. Dad just didn't know how these things worked, so after some convincing he finally went out and got his own lawyer. He got a very fair divorce settlement after that. Mom still to this day can't understand why we don't talk to her much. Former divorce lawyer. Not so much insane, but unfortunately common. Accusing former spouses of molesting their children and domestic violence to retain full custody and get a restraining order to force the spouse out of the marital home. This sets the new status quo for custody, which judges are reluctant to disrupt considerably down the road. Takes months, if not years, for the accused spouse to prove his innocence, and CPS will often find evidence where none exists if the accusing party is a good enough manipulator or actor. Pretty horrendous long-term outcome for all parties. Kids are brainwashed against estranged parents when young. Later, they often grow to resent the accusing parent for poisoning their relationship with an estranged parent. Kids often grow up with a multitude of mental health issues. Probably one of the worst things a person can do to their children, or to win against their former spouse. People who do this and are found out should be jailed. I don't care how long after the fact it is. This is just so absolutely stupid. I work for a divorce attorney now, but the craziest thing came to my attention when I worked for the prosecuting attorney. This couple was breaking up and Mr. left the house. Mrs. went to work the next morning as usual. When she returned home in the evening, she found Mr. had been to the house and removed his clothing and belongings as she expected. What she didn't expect was that he had also gorilla glued her belongings together. He glued the TV remote to the table, the phone to its cradle, the couch pillows to the couch, and even glued the vacuum cleaner to the carpet. She called the police and reported this as property damage. The police went with her through the house, documenting dozens of items glued to various things, but for days she was discovering random things, and she would call to amend or update her report. "My GD oven mitts were glued to the wall," or "he glued the effing sheets together in the linen closet." I've seen people do and say really awful things to each other, but that was diabolical. Wow, that's creative. Smart of her to call the police though. Documenting this up front helps. I can't stop laughing at the absurdity of it all. Just imagining she kept finding random things glued together for weeks afterwards. It's hilariously evil. Not my story, but one I read here a couple of years ago. I really hope I don't butcher it as it's been a while, but here goes. There was a super wealthy guy that was a top exec at a Fortune 500 company who was getting a divorce, and it was rather nasty. This guy was pretty much set for life. He had a bunch of stock, houses, and assets in so many places. The ex-wife wanted everything she could possibly get. The husband came up with an idea that if she let him keep everything, he would give her half of his paycheck for the rest of his life. She quickly agreed because his checks were huge, and this also included any bonuses which were in the millions. As soon as the paperwork was finalized, he quit his job and started to work part-time at a sporting goods store. I can't remember which one. This story was told by another employee there, not the actual guy that got divorced. Anyway, he still had all of his assets, so he would drive to work in a super expensive car, and one day the employee asked how he could possibly afford that car. The guy said he was set for life and didn't even need to work at all, but every Friday when he got his paycheck, it made everything so worth it knowing his ex-wife would only be getting about $150 per check. I remember that one. I think when the ex-wife tried to sue for more money, he just said that the emotional toll of the divorce was too great and he just couldn't handle the stress of his old high-paying job anymore. How about a wholesome, insane one? IANAL, but this was told to me by my mum regarding the divorce that she got from my dad. They couldn't settle on an alimony amount. Mum and her lawyer came in with a number. Dad countered with a number. They couldn't agree, because my dad thought my mom should get twice the amount in alimony she was asking for, and my mom didn't want my dad to give her that much money for a month. It took months for them to settle on a figure that appeased both of them. Even then, my mom puts aside the extra above what she wanted in case my dad ever has a financial emergency, and my dad puts aside the extra she didn't want in case my mom ever has a financial emergency. The funny thing is, they don't know the other is putting the money aside for the other. My mom told me about her emergency stash, and my dad told my brother about his emergency stash. Bro and I discussed it while talking about what nut jobs our parents are. Okay, I'm leaving this thread while the warmth from this post is making me feel better after reading about all the crazy people. Totally feeling the same here. I was just about to leave reading the comment section, and this was the final one. A great one to finish on. Love that story. Not a lawyer, but my partner has a mate who was going through a messy divorce. He registered as a gambling addict and went to some Gambling Anonymous or whatever it's called and proceeded to go to the casino every day, taking wads of cash with him, pretending to gamble it all away, while he was secretly squirreling it all away. That way, when it came to the divorce and he was questioned where all his money went, he could prove that he lost it all through his gambling addiction and never had to pay her a penny. Did he manage to then hide the fact that he had enormous wads of cash he shouldn't have for, presumably, years afterwards? Or did he do something like open up a car wash or laundromat and claim all the money came from there? Although he'd then have to pay taxes on it, but still. Have a friend who went through a nasty divorce and his ex was vengeful as hell, despite him having done nothing wrong like cheating or lying, etc. Basically, he got laid off from a good job, and the loss of status embarrassed her, especially as he took to being a stay-at-home dad and their kids adored him. Never mind, she had an MBA and a six-figure job herself. She would buy expensive things on credit cards to show high expenses, then return it for cash or store credit so that the refund didn't go back on the card, so that she could try to get more support. To just get a job, he took one at Home Depot. He'd been an engineer at a tech company. Later on, he landed an IT consulting position that was part-time, but paid about what he had made at HD working full-time. She petitioned the courts to try and force him to have a full-time job, basically wanting to force him to spend 30 more hours to earn the same. Part of his custody granted him dinner one night per week with the kids. That is 5 to 7 p.m. He asked for it to be school pickup to 7 p.m. instead, and she refused, that even though from 3 to 5 they were at home with a nanny who had to be paid for that time while mom was at work. Isn't that really an unusually small amount of time? Why did he get such a bad deal? Not a divorce lawyer, but about 15 years ago, I handled 2 insurance claims for a man in his 40s or 50s who was getting divorced from his wife, who was in her mid-20s. First, she filed a claim on his auto policy. He was wealthy, but had to have a high-risk auto policy due to many speeding tickets. She was not on his policy, saying that he had crashed into her car on purpose. The claim was denied because there is no coverage for intentional acts. A couple of weeks later, she filed a claim on his homeowner's policy, saying that he stole her engagement ring, which was specifically insured at a high amount like $10,000 plus. Again, she is not the policyholder, and the ring wasn't stolen. He just had possession of it, so there was no claim to be made. I wonder whatever happened with that guy. A friend's ex-wife and he settled their divorce with her getting the house, a hefty chunk of retirement, all the gifted jewelry, and his Harley she had gifted him for his birthday. A few weeks later, a robbery occurred, and the only thing that was stolen was the jewelry that he had gifted her, which was intended for their daughter. She tried to file an insurance claim on the jewelry, but forgot to get appraisals and add as riders, so the max insurance paid was $1,500 for over $20,000 of jewelry. Suspicion is she staged it, but is now stuck with stolen jewelry she can't legally sell, nor wear, nor give to the daughter without tipping the dad off to the scam. My husband's male cousin is going through a nasty divorce at the moment. In the latest bout of crazy, before the lockdown, the nearly ex-wife accused him of raping her and had him arrested outside the school while he was picking up their son. The charges were dropped after he proved his whereabouts when the alleged rape took place, and her story kept changing. The divorce is still ongoing, and she's likely to lose custody. We're waiting for her to accuse him of abusing their son. Why do the proceedings just continue as usual when one party has already proven they'll lie to torpedo the other party like that? No idea, sorry. I think the judge takes it into consideration when they decide who gets custody.